show it as you do these things, and you create and you actually take the action, you start to have the experiences where you prove to yourself you can keep doing it. And it gets easier along the way. That's what I found. It gets easier to do things that are out of my comfort zone, or that I think I have no idea if I can do this, but let's try it anyway. It gets easier to do. And so I bring this point up about dance and about, and we're talking about the action part today, because I want to encourage everybody listening. I know everybody listening has something in their mind that they want to take action on, that they've rationalized themselves out of, they've made excuses for, whatever the thing might be that is stopping you. There's something that you want to do.
I just thought of some while you were talking, Sloan. Wouldn't it be fabulous if out of the thousands of listeners that you have, you would get a few thousand remarks of people reporting how they decided to do something this week and actually did it and carried it through to fruition.
Yes,
Wouldn't that be fabulous?
That would be 100%. And that's what I want to challenge every single person listening today. What is your action? What are you going to do? What are you going to do differently? What are you're going to finally allow yourself to do? Because that was the other part for me. I felt like I allowed myself to do this. And we'd love to hear from you. We would love to hear your comments. Like I said, you can email us, you can comment on our social media, but this action part, this is how, if everybody took action in the direction that they wanted something, think how different our lives would be, right? We would all be living completely different lives. We would get out of this little time. I always call it like wrapped up tight in our little box, right? We've got the rope around us so tight, and we're so tightly wound. We need that expansion and that freedom, and taking action on what it is that you want. That's how you get there. That is how you get there. You don't get there by sitting at home, theorizing about it or doing another self-help course.
Yes. I want to give some thoughts on that. When you're thinking of, okay, you can choose a certain action by which you can choose to do, then by which you can prove this to yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So any action, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be world shaking, because our mind often does that. They try to think of something so world shaking that it ends up nothing.
Yes.
Because I can't think of anything world shaking.
Right.
Something very simple but meaningful, not something completely meaningless, something meaningful. And it doesn't have to be super big, but something that you can do and choose to do, and then carry it through, being aware of yourself throughout. That's all. Yes. And then take stock, let's say every evening or so, and then by the end of the week, and let us know about it. But for yourself, most of all, take stock and then acknowledge yourself for it.
Yeah.
This is very important, that you acknowledge yourself for your positive actions.
Yes.
Because the 99% of people are habituated to having, you know how that internal voice is always going on. It's like
I do.
We used to call a tape going on inside of you.
Yes.
No longer the case, but now it's through the internet or so. You have an internet inside of you.
Right. Yes.
And it's usually critical.
Yes.
And it usually limits you and belittles you and so on. Now, so you acknowledge that you have chosen to do something and you've actually done what you have determined to do. That's a great booster to get you on the path of living in this empowered way.
Yes. And what I found also is that that's the momentum that starts you, because once you do the one thing, it's easier to do the next and the next. It's that momentum that starts to carry you forward.
Right. And take note of how pleasurable that is.
Yes.
How it boosts your self-confidence and your self-respect.
Yes.
Maybe eventually you'll accept yourself unconditionally.
Yes.
That's a big ask.
That is. And I want to go back. I have a note here. I wanted to read one of your pearls of wisdom. This is back from May 10th. And if you're not familiar with Erhard's Pearls of Wisdom, you can sign up on his website, which I'll link to in the show notes. But he sends out pearls of wisdom every week, little, very short, but very concise little bits of information that I find very helpful. And so this one said, for some, it requires discipline to stop hurting themselves. Give yourself the required attentiveness to enjoy treating yourself with care, respect, and love.
Yeah.
I thought that fit very well with what we're talking about.
Yes, yes. But you see how easy it is to dismiss even the first part, that it takes discipline to stop hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, not me, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you may be in the habit of hurting yourself in subtle ways that
Yes.
you're not even aware of.
Yes.
People say, oh, it's subtle though. It doesn't really matter because it's not hitting me over the head. But it's the subtle stuff that goes in so deep. It goes into your very fibers, and,
I do know.
and has its effects there,
Yes.
So be aware of the fact that you, like the majority of people have a tendency to perpetrate hurtful ways upon themselves. They're
Yes.
often ways of thinking about themselves, way of criticizing, way of demeaning themselves, not giving themselves credit, not giving themselves attention. These are all ways of hurting yourself. And there, I bet you could probably come up with many, many more.
Yes. And those subtle ways we hurt ourselves are like chipping away at us. They chip away at our very being in all these parts of us. And that is more because that happens so gradually over time, you don't even notice it. And then you find yourself in this place of whatever despair you might be in. And it's like, well, how did I get here? Well, maybe it wasn't one event, but it was 5,000 little chips away at yourself.
And it wasn't the outer circumstances and conditions.
Right.
It wasn't because your husband or wife left you. It wasn't because your neighbor said something negative about you. It wasn't because you don't have enough money or you're not pretty enough or this or that or this or that. It's what you've been doing to yourself subtly.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. Well, as usual, our conversations go very fast and we're coming up on the end of our time.
Already?
I know. So before we close out today, we've talked about a lot of things. So we started out the conversation talking about one of our listeners sent a comment from our episode on resistances. So we talked a lot about, and this particular one was on pain and disassociation. And so we've talked through that. And again, I want to encourage everyone listening, questions, comments, please send them to us via email or via our social media. But then we also got into the real topic today of creating what you speak, which obviously is the title of the show. And I'll give my closing thoughts, and Erhard, I'll turn it over to you for your closing thoughts. To me, creating what you speak in my intent for the show was taking the thoughts and putting them into action, putting them into, again, as I've said several times, but I don't know how else to say it in a better way. No more theorizing, no more constantly living in self-help, waiting for your life to begin. That was one thing I felt.
Fantasizing, it's called. Fantasizing.
Yes, fantasizing. And yes, that's the best way to describe it. And I felt like when I was going through that I was living my life on the sidelines. Like I was watching everybody else live theirs, but I was on the sidelines. So the action is key. And I'll just share from my own experience. It's not as scary as it seems. You don't have to start out with these major, huge things. You can start out with small, meaningful things to you and work your way up. But I think you'll find once you start and do these small incremental things that are meaningful to you, that you'll build the momentum that is going to make it easier for you to continue to do these things and take action on the things that are important for you.
Let me just insert this so that eventually that's your way of being.
Yes.
You will automatically express those things that you know through your life, through your actions.
Yes. And I will say, I have had times where that is my state of being. It continues to grow as I grow, but that became my state of being. And I'll find sometimes I'll talk to people who are not in that space, like maybe old friends that I haven't talked to for a while, or whoever it might be. And I find myself looking back at the old way that I used to be, but then also I think, oh, wow, that person is still there. That's where they are. That's still where they are. And I look and I see how far I've come. And again, another moment of being proud of yourself, because you will experience that as you go through this, and it becomes who you are. It just becomes who you are. you will, you'll experience these changes, and it's important to recognize that as you see that in yourself.
Right. That's very true, and a very important point, that it is important to recognize, to acknowledge it, to give yourself credit for it.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, since you're always talking to yourself, you might as well start talking kindly to yourself.
Right. Exactly.
Positively.
Yes.
You know, who wants to build up more negativity by its repetition?
I don't. Right? Not me. I had many years of that, and I'm over that. So what are your closing thoughts for today, Erhard?
Take action.
Yeah.
So it occurs to me, look, this is recorded, right?
Yes.
And we will have some people listening to this who really take this seriously, because they recognize this has to do with my very fulfillment, my fulfillment in life, my fulfillment of the reason why I am alive, why I'm in this life as a human being. I want to fulfill this. They have a sense that there is an importance to their life and to their being. Yes. So you have this recorded. If something is said that really got hold of you, listen to it again. And then stop for a moment, stop the recording and sit with that for a few moments. Let it be embedded in you. Let it be impressed, and thereby have the energy inside of you to contribute to your life in your actions.
Yes, totally agree. Again, Dr. Erhard Vogel has been my guest this week. He is the author of A Dialogue with Death, The Teacher of Life, An Ancient Story for the Modern World. Erhard, again, thank you for joining us this week. We look forward to the next conversation.
It's been wonderful to be with you, Sloan.
You've been listening to the Create What You Speak podcast, brought to you by webtalkradio.net. You can also hear the podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and your favorite podcasting platform. I'm Sloan Fremont, and I hope you'll join us for the next episode of the Create What You Speak podcast, where we will continue to free our minds, expand our consciousness, and untangle those thoughts and patterns that keep us from living the life we desire. Check out my website, sloanfremont.com, to learn more.